This bracelet is one of my favourite Cellini designs. But there was one big issue. Because it had no clasp, resizing it was very frustrating. So I redesigned it. Now it's the same beautiful Cellini technique, but a bracelet. Adjustable, wearable, and so much easier to fit perfectly. Here's the new version up close. It's still the same sculptural Cellini spiral, but now we have a proper clasp closure. That means you can adjust the length exactly to your wrist, and I'll show you how to do that. This makes it much easier to put on and off and be the right size for you. Let's go over what you need, and don't worry, it's simpler than it looks. We are just using seed beads for this. So these are the beads that we are going to use for recreating this version here. We're going to use these teal-based colours with some pops of white. We're going to start off with size 15s, and this is a Miyuki 15, Miyuki 15, Miyuki 11, Miyuki 11, Miyuki 11, and this is a Toho 11. Then Miyuki 8, Toho 8, and a size 6, and this is a Miyuki as well. So why are we mixing two brands, and is there any reason that they're in a specific order? Well, Toho beads are a fraction taller than their Miyuki counterparts. So if we take a look at these two beads here, this white one is a fraction taller than this teal one. Okay, so if we want a lovely graduated spiral, it's best to position the slightly taller size 11 between the Miyuki 11 and the next size up, the 8. And the same goes for here as well. I would not want to put this one in this place. It's best to have the smaller Miyuki, slightly bigger Toho, and then jump to the size 6. Now, if you've only got one brand, that is fine. Just use those. But if you have got a mix of brands, or you're not quite sure, do a test, put them on a needle, maybe put 10 on a needle, and see how long they are. And if any are slightly taller, put them in the right order, graduating the size up. Of course, you don't have to do that. I've made many Cellini spirals in various configurations over the years, and I have mixed brands up, and it works out just fine anyway. You'll need some good beading thread and a needle, and I've used a button clasp. Now let's get started beading. So each of these piles of beads represents a stripe of colour, and you can reference that in the sample above. I'm starting at the size 15s, and I'm picking up sets of beads as I go across. The number of beads you should pick up are listed above each pile here, and this will get you started. It's either going to be 2 or 4 beads all the way across, and I initially made a mistake and picked up 4 for the very first set, but you do in fact need 3 at the very beginning. So pull these down your thread, and actually this is a good time to mention a stop bead. I highly recommend using one before you start, and I realised I needed to add one later. But just double check the count, make sure you have got all of the beads as shown right here. This foundation row is very important to get right. Once you've done that, you then need to work backwards in the same sequence, going back down through the 8s and the 11s in the reverse order. You then add the 15s and then you repeat that sequence again and then again. So you end up with 3 sets of gradually increasing and then decreasing beads. And that is what your final lot should look like. You will notice that the white 15s, there are 4 of them in the middle between the sets. At the beginning there should be 3 on one end and 1 on the other end, unlike what I've done. So that is your foundation row. Now this is the point that you talk about sizing. So I'm comparing my already made bracelet right next to the newly strung length of beads, and I'm using the same brands as the original bracelet, and you can see that in the process of making the Cellini it actually shortens it. So this is where you have to do the test. I created this bracelet that was 19 centimeters excluding the clasp, but the starting length of the row of beads is about an extra 1.5 centimeters. So in inches, the length of beads is about 8 inches, but the bracelet ends up being 7.5. So you want to find your ideal bracelet length and then add 1.5 centimeters or about 1/2 inch. Now what happens if you need to make it shorter or longer? I suggest taking out a repeat of one of those colours. Perhaps if you need to make it very slightly shorter, take out the teal beads. If you need to make it quite a bit shorter, take out 2 of the size 8s and do that on every repeat. So you have to start it over again with this foundation row, but you have to get to this point to know. If you need to make it longer, if it's only a little bit longer, you can add in another size 11, or an extra bit longer, add in another size 8. And when you're adding them in, you're always adding them in pairs. Likewise, if you're removing them, always add them in pairs. So once you are happy with your initial starting set of beads, make adjustments to your piles of beads so that they remain in the same order, and then you'll be ready to continue. This string of beads is considered your first 2 rows of peyote, hence we're always picking the beads up in pairs. Now let's get started and add the 3rd row, which is the first true row of peyote. And this is the point where I remembered I needed 1 extra white 15 on this end, so I just added that in before I started. And then what you're going to do is work your way along this row of beads, adding 1 at a time and working in a peyote fashion. So pick up 1 bead, skip the 1 bead, go into the next. And you're starting off a little bit of a fiddly end because you're working with 15s. But try and keep a tight tension as you go. And you want that little brickwork look. So when we are working this row here, the bead you pick up is the next colour bead you're going into. So we've got 2 lots of silver lined teal here, so we're picking up the first bead there, and you can see the stripe forming, and then we're also picking up a second one. Take this nice and slow, try and keep the nice tension. Now we're picking up the white bead and going into the white bead. And if you keep it nice and tight, it stops the beads twisting round. Now we're onto the 3/8 in this light turquoise colour, and we've got 2 sets of those. The next colour 8, we've just got 1 lot. And now we're up to the size 6. And that's our first half sequence done. And now we're going to work the rest of the sequence going back down in sizes. So follow the beads along your bead mat, not forgetting where you have got a double set in places, which is this colour size 8 and then the bead the other side of the white beads. That's a double set as well. Okay, so make sure that you've always got that lovely diagonal stripe happening. Keep going all the way down, and then you will get to the size 15, and then you'll work your way back up again. Do take note of how I am holding the thread over my finger between each bead that I'm adding. It really helps hold the tension. Tension will become critical later on as well. And this is what it should start to look like. This is a good point to show you what happens when you lose your concentration and go wrong. The stripe has disappeared and we've got 2 size 6s sitting on top of each other. So I double sped, unpicked, and I could get away with going back through the beads because they were big rather than unthreading my needle. So you just need to pay attention to what you're doing, and every now and then just look at what you're doing and make sure the stripe is there. See, looks much better. Now we are nearly at the end. Keep bringing that stop bead down because it will really help you keep that tension. Now here's another mistake. I've realized that I've picked up 3 of those size 15 turquoise beads instead of 2. So I'm going to use my bead exploding tool, which is a push pin and an eraser. Pop it inside of the bead and it explodes the bead from the inside out so it doesn't cut your thread, and it removes the bead. Now we can continue. And this is the last bead being added for this row. So you can see that leftover white bead. That was a mistake to start with. It can just hang out there and we'll get rid of that later with the stop bead. Now we are ready to turn around and go back towards you. So let's follow the pattern of the stripes. Do keep that in mind all of the time. The white 15s are our double stripe. Now we need to pick up the other colour of 15, the turquoise, and bring that stripe in to come towards you. So now we are picking up the white 15s. Now work your way along the pile of beads on your mat, adding them in exactly the same sequence. And if you're unsure which bead you're picking up when you're working towards yourself, the bead you're coming out of is the bead you pick up next. So it alternates whether you're going away from yourself or towards yourself. One important thing to note when you're adding this row is that the previous rows might have twisted around on themselves. So look out for that. That is not what you want at all. But do keep that in mind and twist it back the right way so you've got a nice stripe. Okay, this is at the end of the 4th row. And this is turning the corner to start the 5th row. Now we are at the end of the 5th row, just adding in that last bead, following the stripes. And then as we turn the corner, we are adding in the next stripe. So move along one pile in your bead mat and add the new colour in. And then continue as you have been doing. Keep repeating the sequence back and forth with the same pattern. And then you want to pull it especially tight either side of the size 6 beads and hold that tension, because that's where you really want the ridge to form, okay? Don't feel afraid to encourage it to sort of fold along that size 6 stripe. The aim is to really get some curve and bend to it, not for it to stay flat. Okay, let's take stock of progress and count the number of rows. And I do that by counting the number of size 6 beads because they are easiest to count, the biggest. I need to do 2 more rows because I'm aiming for 14 rows overall. Do keep in mind the more rows you do, the shorter it might get in length. Okay, so here we are, 14 rows complete. Let's take a look at what it looks like from the side. We've got those nice ridges created by the size 6. It's a very sculptural piece. And the ends should match up as if you were joining them into a bangle, but we're not going to. Now we're ready to add the clasp. This version here, I used a metal button with a simple loop. But for this one, I found this rondelle bead, which looks just a perfect colour match for it. And just about the right size as well. So I'm going to add that onto one end and add a loop onto the other end. So I've chosen my bead colour that I'm going to use, and I've positioned my thread coming out one of the beads sort of halfway along this edge. And there's no exact formula for doing this. We just need to decide how long we want to have the little stalk that the button's going to sit on. So I think that might be enough actually. And I'm going to pick up an extra bead to use as a stop bead. So skip that bead, go back down through the big bead and then all of the other beads. And now instead of going into the same hole, I'm going to go into the bead next to it. Now I'm going to weave an extra stitch down before I turn around and go back through all of those beads again, just to keep it secure, because the clasp can always be the weak point to your bracelet. So we just go up through these and repeat. And I like to do that as many times as the beads will take extra thread. Just need to line up those beads so the needle goes through. Okay, so just reinforce that. You can weave back down a little bit further into the beadwork if you like to make it more secure. Come back up. I should think I'd be able to go through that about 4 times, and that should make it nice and secure. Now we are ready to add a loop of beads on the other end of the bracelet. So I wove in a new thread because I didn't have enough on this end, and I'm also coming out of roughly the midway across the bracelet. The question is always size, and I had a great idea because I've already got this loop here on this one, so I'll try it on this side, and it is almost okay, but because we've got a stop bead on the end here, it won't really go over that. So I counted the beads on here and it was 25, so I've gone with 27, and I'm going to do a test to see if it will work. Now this is a little bit clumsy, but what I do is hold and put the beads under tension, but hold them there, holding my thumb in place like that, and then I think that will be just right. Possibly do one less, but once I go through this a couple of times it will firm up a bit, so I think that will be great. So we are going to attach this in the same way as we added the bead on the other end by going back down into here. And you can go down one bead or a couple, and I like to vary it. And then back up, and then we have to go through all of these beads. It's still fairly loose at the moment. Time to try it again. Yep, it's already a little bit firmer. So I'm going to do exactly what I did on the other side, and now go down a couple more beads. And then back up and reinforce it one more time. So I'll do that, and then we are nearly finished. So I'll see you back here. The last thing to do is to use my thread zap to finish off these ends. So I have got a few threads here that I've woven the ends in on, so they're very secure, and I can go in with the thread zap great for getting in tight corners, and this version of the thread zap is fantastic. I highly recommend this one over previous versions. Everyone who buys one absolutely loves it. So here is our finished bracelet. Clasp tightened up a little bit, as I thought it would, but looking good. I love it when you can find a great colour match in a clasp. So there we are. Two more bracelets for my collection. If you have any questions when you are making your version of this, please drop a comment below and I'll be happy to help you out. You can check out the previous video as well that makes the bangle version of this, in case you want a bangle version. Have fun choosing your colours. I'll pop the colours that I used in both of these in the description below, so if you want to get those, you can. Of course, I'd love to see your own unique colourways as well. Please share this video with your friends if you found it useful. Don't forget to like this video as well, and also subscribe so you get to see future videos that I make.